This episode is sponsored by RDB Speaks. Hello, my name is Crystal Petry, and you are watching another episode of the Crystal Petry Podcast, Season 3. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Xenia Barnes, a powerful voice in emotional intelligence and vulnerability. Dr. Xenia helps people understand their emotions, build deeper connections, and lead with authenticity. I am super excited to dive into her insights on what it really means to be emotionally aware and courageously vulnerable. Dr. Xenia Barnes, Reverend Dr. Xenia Barnes. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
No problem. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Where in the world are you?
I am in Brooklyn, New York.
Oh, BK, as they call it, BK.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I am excited to have you on because the words that I use to describe our conversation, I feel like have just been so overused and misused.
hmm
So to have you here to break that down for myself and for my community, I'm very excited about it. And hopefully the words can be used again for their
hmm
original meaning and the power behind them. Because that's something else. I feel like those words have been watered down because they have been used so much.
hmm I definitely agree. I feel like they became buzzwords. So,
Yes,
so
yes.
it's like, hey, trauma informed, emotional intelligence. All those things have become buzzwords, and so there's no action
Hmm.
behind it, no strategic planning or no policy
Yes.
or implementation behind it. And so now they're just words.
Yes.
They're words without meaning. And that is why we often begin to feel unseen, unheard, and misused.
Yes. So, what is your definition of emotional intelligence?
That's a great question. When I think about, as a behavioral scientist, right, when I think about emotional intelligence, I think about our ability to recognize and understand and skillfully navigate our emotions. Both our own and others. It's not so much of one against the other. You have to be able to bi-directionally do it simultaneously. And so a lot of that comes down to understanding and not suppressing difficult feelings, but developing a capacity to emotionally process the information, make better decisions, and build stronger relationships.
Oh, wow. That's good. That's good. Okay. So, is emotional intelligence often seen as just important as IQ in this world?
Now, that's a good question because it depends on the space that you're navigating in,
Hmm.
and it also depends on the mindset. And in this world of AI and IQ and all those different things. So, because the technical skill only gets you so far, and the interconnectedness world, success depends on the collaboration and the adaptability and resilience of, I'm going to say, of all which requires emotional skill. So you
Hmm.
can't really have one without the other. You can be the smartest person in the room, but if you can't manage stress and communicate effectively or understand what motivates others, you'll struggle to lead and be innovative. And that is the root of maintaining relationships.
What are some key components, would you say, Dr. Zena, as a doctor in behavioral sciences? What would you say are key components of emotional intelligence, and how should that show up in your everyday life?
There are definitely four components that I would like to
Okay.
point out. That is self awareness, self-regulation, um, and the relationship and management. So when you think about self-awareness, you have to think about your awareness of your social, your social awareness. You have to think about your relation, how you manage and interact in relationships, but also how you self-regulate. Right. And
Mhm.
so, how do you process so that you're operating from a place that is proactive and not reactive? And that is the most important one, because that unlocks the other ones. So once you get past that, then your self-regulation is about pausing and choosing the right response rather than being hijacked by your emotions, right? And then that tailors you into your social awareness of being able to read a room. You know, most people come in and they feel energy when they walk in the room. So that's part of emotional intelligence, your ability to scan the room and understand the energy that you're walking into, and then self-regulate to know how you're going to navigate through that room so that you are coming from a positive mindset and not an emotional reactive mindset. And then it's just that ability of noticing of when your colleague is feeling overwhelmed,
Mhm.
even if they haven't said anything. We all have those friends who we know that can feel when we going through something out of nowhere, and they just call us and they say, "Hey, what's going on?" And we like,
Yes.
"How did you know?"
Yes.
That, that's a part of that. That's a part of that. That social awareness. That's a part of being able to do that, right? And then your relationship management, knowing how to have difficult conversations and not shying away from that, not calling people out, but calling people in, I like to say, so that you are strengthening relationship instead of damaging them. We've all probably experienced the leader who wants to point out all your weaknesses, but don't tell you like what you can do to fix it. And
Correct.
so, you have those performance reviews and they give you a whole list of goals, but but they don't highlight your strengths. You
Yes.
want to be able to say, and I tell people that I coach, like when I do my business consulting, move away from strength and weaknesses and start to use glows and grows. And so you say, here are the things that you're growing at. These are the things that you do phenomenally. Now, here are the areas that you can grow in. And this is how I want to develop you up. I want you to take this professional development training. I want you to do this. I want you to send it on these meetings, shadow and become a mentee of this person who is doing this skill well, so that you can sharpen that skill. When you can lead from that, that's when you know that you are in a place of great emotional intelligence, because you're building people up instead of breaking them down.
And you're building them up while you are correcting them. So
Correct.
they don't feel diminished. They
Hmm.
don't feel beat down after they've had a conversation with you. I love
Exactly.
it. I love it. How can someone start recognizing their own emotional patterns?
I would say, start by becoming curious about your reactions rather than judgmental.
Okay.
Notice what situations are constantly triggering stress, anger, or anxiety, and pay attention to your body. Your body holds tension. Your body will let you know something is wrong before your mind even gets a chance to tell you.
True.
You can shift and tell the way you're singing, or the way pains and aches. So many different things happen before you even connect to recognize that, oh, I'm stressed. I'm pretty sure if you've waken up on days where you have like this migraine and you're not understanding why you have this migraine, a lot of that time is because your mind is trying to process the things that your body are going through, or situations that you haven't dealt with, so you stuck them away and they arise on their own. So you want to make sure that you're paying attention to that. And then you also want to make changes in your breathing. Like, people don't really recognize how important breathing is, how important meditation is, how important in self-regulating and understanding, like, you know what, I'm going to pause right now, I'm going to take a deep breath, and I'm going to give myself grace in a moment to process and get to understand what's happening right now. And so those are some of the great ways that you can do so that that knot in your stomach doesn't begin to control the way you react to things. And these are just physical cues that often
Right.
arise before you consciously become aware of your emotions, or how your emotions are beginning to take over. So keep it simple. Just start naming what you're feeling without trying to fix it immediately.
Mhm. That really leads into my next question. Why do you think so many people struggle with naming their emotions and naming and identifying their feelings?
That would be because many weren't taught emotional vocabulary as children. And because we weren't taught emotional vocabulary as children, we were just taught, like, you're young, what do you have to worry about? Things like that. We don't know. We often don't learn what it means to be happy, be sad, or we're fine. Those are the things that we were just like, you're either, as a child, you're happy, you're sad, you're angry, you're fine. Like, those are just the things that we were told, but we weren't told how to pinpoint the spectrum between those words. So also, from a trauma informed perspective, sometimes our nervous system learn early that feeling of dangerousness and fear. So we develop coping strategies that involve disconnecting from our emotions altogether, rather than leaning into what it is that we're feeling and trying to navigate and process what it is that we're feeling. So preventive, right? It's preventative that we make sure that we understand the limits of our ability, but also that connection to what it is to be vulnerable, and what does that vulnerability brings, and the information that it brings, so that we can begin to process those things. And that's why I say keeping a journal is the most important skill that you can bestow upon yourself, because it allows you to go back and reflect on the things that happen, and it gives you those aha moments about, these are the things that triggered me, and or these are the people or the places that triggered me, and it allows you to be able to process, and gives you that self-awareness of, what, I know that this happens when I'm in this space. I'm going to remove myself from being in those spaces, or either I'm going to address this situation with this person, so I no longer have those stresses when I'm around them.
Dr. Zena, you really just confirmed something that I read, and I was going to bring it up during our conversation. I read that our generation, so our age group,
Mm-hmm.
are both emotionally enlightened and emotionally exhausted.
Mm.
And the reason it said that was because our generation is the first generation that is being educated and made aware about emotional intelligence. So we are having to self educate ourselves, as
Mm-hmm.
well as apply the information that we are learning, while also teaching our children emotional intelligence and how to connect the different emotions and how to work through the different emotions and why you are feeling this and why you are feeling that. So it's like we're caught in the middle. And you really just confirmed that, because I know for me, personally speaking, I was not taught about emotional intelligence, feelings, authenticity, any of that growing up. And I'm sure it's because my mother and my aunts and uncles, they were not taught that either.
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't have the language and the vernacular to teach me.
Correct. And so those things just got pushed down. It was, we just get through. We don't
Yes.
harbor on it. We just move forward. That was yesterday. Today's today. Move on. And what we notice is that that became a generational cycle of trauma that began to be passed down, because they were doing the best that they could, and
Yes.
so the next generation just did the best they could. It was learned behavior. It was learned behavior that was passed down.
Yes.
And now we're in this space of becoming more aware. So we are not hiding from our vulnerability anymore. We are now in a place that we have tools, and we have the language to address and process it. And that's the most important thing.
RDB Speaks is dedicated to empowering individuals with visible and invisible disabilities through personalized coaching, advocacy, and community support. Led by Dr. Xenia Barnes, a passionate social and behavioral scientist, their mission is to provide actionable strategies and resources that help clients navigate life's challenges and embrace their unique journeys. They believe in creating inclusive environments where everyone's voice is heard and valued. RDB Speaks provides a promising community that works together to break down barriers and foster a culture of empowerment and resilience. That is. Let's talk about vulnerability.
Mhm.
This is a two-part question. First question, what is your definition of vulnerability? The second question is, what does being vulnerable mean to you, especially in the world that portrays and puts on toughness? You got to be tough, you got to be strong, especially with like the colloquialisms of the strong Black woman.
Mhm.
We hear that all the time like it's a badge of honor. I don't consider it a badge of honor at all. But you are the expert here, so please explain.
So it's definitely not a badge of honor. It's
Thank
not
you.
a badge. It is that was used as a microaggression. It was used as something to keep us in our place. So we were taught that, oh, the strong Black woman. So when they were ready to tear us down, we just had this mentality of this is how I have to be, and it broke up our households. It broke up
Yes.
so many different things because we were so busy being strong that we didn't allow, or we didn't know how to process how to let someone else in a relationship lead, because we
Yes.
felt like we had to be male and female at the same time, and so that's where that difference come in with the strong Black woman. I can be strong, but I could be vulnerable as well, and processing that is extremely important. So when I think about vulnerability, I think about, I would like to say, vulnerability is the courage to show up authentically. It is being able to understand the things that you can't control and the outcomes you can't control, but process and focus on the things that you can control. It's about being weak and sharing, and not being weak but not oversharing, allowing yourself not to just dump your trauma or whatever you're going through on someone else, but also being willing to seek help and understand that it's important to reach out when you're battling something that you can no longer carry, when it's something that you can't go through. Dismantling that strong Black woman thing and saying, I'm not okay. I'm not okay, and I need support with this. That's what being vulnerable is about, but that's also being emotionally intelligent and vulnerable is about, because it's allowing you to build healthy relationships. It's allowing you to not go down the rabbit hole of I have to go through this alone. It's removing the shame from things or the trauma that you're experiencing. But it's also creating that healthy vulnerability allows you to serve in connections. It's sharing something that helps not only you but others, feeling less alone and building understanding between you and others. Sharing often drives how we can process that anxiety, and it also brings that anxiety down. I don't know about you, but I know it's been times where I've been carrying heavy loads, and my thought process is I don't want to bear this burden on someone else because it's so heavy. But I didn't recognize by doing that the people who love me most were stressed out because they were watching me trying to navigate, and they didn't know how to help because I wasn't sharing exactly what it was that I was going through. So they didn't know how to help me. So that being vulnerable and sharing what it is allows you to tap into those who can help without you feeling like, without you carrying that weight, and without you going into a deep depressive state. And so that's why being sharing and vulnerability is so important, because it removes that shame. It also keeps you from suffering heavy things that you don't have to bear on your own, but it allows you to seek within a community that you may not even realize that you are a part of.
Yes. How does someone know when or know the difference between oversharing, which you were talking about a few minutes ago, oversharing and just being vulnerable?
So you want to ask yourself, am I sharing this to connect with other people, or am I sharing this to feel better about myself? And so that's the difference. The difference is, are you sharing so that you can seek advice that is tangible and actionable, or are you just sharing this for the sake of, I'm just sharing it just to share it? And if you're just sharing just to share it, that's when you're oversharing. Because if you're not looking for a solve or a solution, an action that can come behind it, then you're just oversharing. But if you're doing this, if you're sharing in the sense of helping not only yourself but others, then that's being vulnerable.
What is your message for men? Because I feel like when we speak about being emotionally intelligent, being vulnerable, sharing, a lot of times the visual, especially, is women,
Mm-hmm.
being vulnerable and emotionally intelligent and sharing your feelings and your emotions. But for men, and maybe not as much anymore in, 2025, 2026 and on, maybe not as much anymore, but still, I feel like men have a stigma where you have to be hard. You
Mm-hmm.
have to hold it all in. You have to bottle it up. You have to figure it out all by yourself because you're the leader. You are a man. You're supposed to be strong. And, Temptations is one of my favorite groups. And
Mm-hmm.
they had a song, A Man is Not Supposed to Cry. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that men really took that to heart and took it literal. And now we have men today that are not vulnerable, not emotionally intelligent. And of course, I'm not speaking about all men,
Mm-hmm.
but a lot of them are in that situation where maybe they want to be vulnerable, but they can't. They got to be hard. They got to keep it all in. They have to figure it out.
And so, and leading into that, and I'm glad you brought up the temptations, because you have to think about back in that time what they
Hmm.
were experiencing. So you look at those times back then and the times that we are in now, and that even speaks to what I said earlier about the generational cycles of trauma and how it's passed down, or those traumatic behaviors have been passed down because we don't know. They don't know how to navigate through that. So if you weren't taught the language, the
Hmm.
verbiage of how to navigate through that and process what it is that you're going through, then you don't know how to be vulnerable because you were taught that this is a man. If you're a man, you're tough. You don't cry. You have this exterior. But then you also realize that why their suicide rate is so high, because all
Wow.
those things are happening, and
I did not connect that.
and they're by themselves going through this, and they don't know how to ask for help for the people or their partners who are supposed to be there, and we're supposed to do this together. But I can't say to you that I'm experiencing this, because then you're going to look at me as I'm weak. So we have to recognize that vulnerability is not weakness. I need to be vulnerable in this safe space with the people who love me most, so that they can help me be my strongest version or the best version of myself. And when you think about men, you have to think about the society, what society puts on them, all the weight, all everything that the pressures that they put on them. A lot of the times they don't even recognize how people don't recognize how your environmental state impacts or influence that masculinity in men. So you think about those who are living in areas where they're at work, where they're being mobbed, or where they're living in areas that have high um, exposure to violence. That plays a huge part of how it would influence, or what it looks like or feels like to be a man, because I have to have this exterior, this facade of don't try me, so there's so many different things that plays into that. And so For those men that are listening in, I want you to know that we love you. I want you to know that it is okay to be vulnerable, and you find your person, whether it's a therapist, whether it's a life coach, whether it's your partner, a minister, whoever it is that you need to be vulnerable with, so that you can process what it is that you're going through, because we need you. We need you to be okay. We need you to be the best version of yourself. And I feel like that men are not told that often, especially our black men. Our black men are not told that it is okay to go through hard times, but it's equally important to make sure that you're getting the help and the fellowship that you need, so that you can process those things, so that you can be strong.
Yes. What? That was so well said, Dr. Zena. That was so well said. And I know that at least one man, more than one, but at least one man that heard that will be helped because of what you said. And it is absolutely true. We need our men to be the best versions of themselves. We absolutely do.
Yes, we want them to show up. We want to build back. We want to bring back healthy relationships. So we want you to be able to articulate what you're going through. I'm not saying that you have to cry about everything. I'm not saying that you have to share everything. But what I am saying is the things that are weighing on you, that's making you have these difficult days, and that's making you want to shut down, those are the things you need to talk about. You need to process those things, so that you're able to articulate with your partner that you need space when you're having a bad day. So you need to process your things first, so that you can bring them to the table. And as women, our job is to allow that space and allow that grace. Because we often are more intuitive about our emotions, we tend to nag on, and it's like, no, talk to me right now, right now, right now. And it's like, that's not how most men process. So we have to understand that we have to allow that space, and that safe space, and be able to be that comfort zone that, baby, I'm here when you're ready to talk, so that we can get through this together. That is different language. That is trauma informed language. That is what your partner needs to hear in order for them to recognize that they're in a safe space. Not, you need to talk to me now, because this is when I'm ready to talk about it. Because your story and the way you process things is not the same as someone else. We all
Correct.
have different ways of processing stress, trauma, whatever it is. We all have different ways of processing it, and we cannot force our way to process on someone else. We have to allow them that space and that grace to process their story, or whatever it is that they're going through, the way that they need to, so that they can feel comfortable enough to be vulnerable with us.
Yes. What are some myths about vulnerability that you would like to debunk, Dr. Barnes?
I would say the biggest myth is that vulnerability equals weakness.
Hmm.
And I said this a little earlier, but I really want to highlight, vulnerability does not equal weakness. It is actually a strength, because it's allowing you to begin to seek support that you need, but it's allowing you to shed the heaviness that is often on our shoulders and on our back, that as black people begin to show up as high blood pressure, it begins to show up as brain tumors, aneurysm, it begins to show up as diabetes, it begins to show up as all these different medical things, because we feed that stress, that hidden stress, or those hidden traumas, with alcohol. We feed it with salty foods. We feed it with disconnecting from people or ourselves. So that leads into anxiety, depression, all those different invisible mental disabilities, that we don't recognize that all those things are connected to us not being vulnerable and not seeking the support that we need. So it's important to recognize that being vulnerable doesn't mean that you lose control, but it actually means that choosing to be vulnerable is taking control of your story rather than hiding from it. It's allowing yourself to think of vulnerability as your way of sharing with everyone, but actually your discernment of being authentic while my maintaining appropriate boundaries and expectations on your life and how you interact with others.
Dr. Barnes, listen, we 29 minutes and 12 seconds into this conversation, and you got some gems. Like, this has been so enlightening for me as the host.
Mm.
Like, you are speaking truth and value to words that have just been watered down, that have been overused. And you are giving those words and these ideals back their power on this podcast. And I thank you for it. We're not even done, but I just felt like I needed to say that to you right now.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
What role does courage play in being vulnerable?
Woo, child. Look, you thought we tapped into some things before. Courage, courage isn't the absence of fear.
Correct.
It's feeling fear and choosing to act anyway.
Yes.
Every time we choose vulnerability, we're essentially saying this relationship in this moment, this truth is worth the risk. It's worth the risk of being hurt or feeling rejected. It takes courage to choose connection over protection
Oh,
again and again. Because so often we think, you know what, I'm going to protect my feelings. I want to protect myself. So I'm not going to be vulnerable. I'm not going to open up about this thing that's weighing on me. And that's leading from fear and not taking the courage to step up and say, you know what, my mental wellness and my well-being is more important than this fear of being rejected or this fear of being judged. And so that's the role that courage plays.
earlier in our conversation, Dr. Barnes, you were speaking that self awareness is one of the key components of healthy emotional intelligence. I would like to lean into that a little bit more.
Mhm.
Explain to us what is self awareness and what practices can we do today or start implementing that would help us improve our self awareness?
I would say self-awareness is about doing self-inventory. It's about knowing who you are, knowing what sets you off, knowing what makes you happy, what's your love language, knowing when you need to take a beat, step back, remove yourself so that you can reset, restore, and then relaunch and come back as the best version of yourself. And in order to do that, there's small things that you can do. Checking in with yourself a few times a day. I know for myself, because I deal with like high stressful things. I support a lot of survivors of domestic abuse. I support a lot of survivors of gun violence and things of that nature. So those traumas often get that energy gets passed on to me, right, as an empath. And so I schedule in moments that allows me to just take a breather and to process and journal out, and so I can dump those things off of myself and not carry them into my next meeting, but also not carry them into my space and my day and into my time with my family. So those checking in a few times a day, that's the great way. You want to ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? What do I need? That's a very important question. What do I need to feel okay, to feel safe, to feel positive right now, to shift my energy? What do I need? And then noticing your patterns. When do you feel the most energized? When do you feel depleted?
Mm,
And
yes.
that's something we forget to check in about. When do you feel depleted? When do you need to say, you know what, I'm going to reschedule the rest of my afternoon because right now
Yes.
I'm maxed out and I need to replenish my cup. And so if you can move things around, move things around. And then also it's about revealing to yourself those aha moments, standing in the mirror and saying those affirmations and building yourself up. And then practicing that pause reaction. That time, and I spoke about this earlier, that time when you just need to say, even if it's for a few seconds, I'm going to take a minute. I'm going to breathe. I'm going to inhale positivity. I'm going to exhale doubt. And I'm going to recognize that I too am a person and I too am deserving of grace. I too am deserving to recognize that I am enough and I bring a lot to the table. My brilliance is not to just to be lent out. My brilliance is for myself as well. And those pausing moments, those create space for self-awareness to thrive and to emerge.
How does someone know when they need to take a beat, when they need to pause? Especially if you've been living in that space for years or
Mhm.
perhaps your whole life, how do they know when to take a break, when to take a pause, when to breathe in and breathe out?
Your body will tell you first. And so that's why it is so important to listen to your body, because your heart will start to race sometimes.
Mhm.
Your breathing gets shallow, tension starts to rise. You ever felt like sometimes you just feel like, oh my god, I feel so hot, I'm not sure, like what is this, a hot, like what is going on, my body feels hot. But that's letting you know you need to pause, you need to take a break, you need to take a breather, because there's some type of tension somewhere that's arising and you need a moment so that your body can self-regulate. And then there's also those little things of recognizing that these are signals that your nervous system begin to activate. And so that's why it's important to recognize that your mind, your body, your energy, your spirit, all those things are connected and to your nervous system. And your nervous system will shock your body when you need a moment to pause. So mentally, you make the right choice. Everything is not black and white. But
Mhm.
sometimes there's an urgency of feeling like I have to respond right now. But you don't. You don't have to respond. You need to take a moment before you respond and recognize everything doesn't need a immediate response, because sometimes when you respond immediately, you're responding out of with emotions and you're not responding with rational thinking. And so you want to make sure that you're not being reactive. You want to make sure that you are dealing with the situation that's happening and recognizing that it's not happening to you. It's a situation that's occurring, but it's not happening to you. Giving yourself that time to pause allows you to come from a rational space and not a space where you're taking things personally.
Let's talk about emotional intelligence in relationships and emotional intelligence in leadership at work. How does emotional intelligence help strengthen romantic relationships?
I will continue to say, I love when I get that question.
Yeah.
I continue to say that because we have to realize that everybody's not in the same space.
Mhm.
And that's the beginning stages of recognizing how it can strengthen. Because if yourself or your partner don't have the language to be able to operate from an emotional intelligent space, if you don't have the language to determine what it is that you're feeling and articulate what it is that you're feeling to have effective communication, then it's going to continue to cause tension, because one person may have the language, but it's coming across as being judgmental or it's coming across as being dismissive, because let's say I don't have that language and
Mhm.
my partner does. And if my partner is saying, baby, you need to talk about this, you can't just hold those things in. And right now you're coming across aggressive, or you're coming across angry, and I need to know what's going on. To me, what I'm hearing is, I'm hearing that you're putting me down. I'm hearing that you're being judgmental. I'm hearing that you're dismissing, or I'm hearing that, like, to me, I'm taking it as you're being narcissistic, but I'm not recognizing that, because I'm not articulating that I'm feeling this way because of this. Then I don't recognize that you're trying to help me. And so that's how it impacts a relationship, when both partners don't have that ability to be emotional intelligent, because they don't know how. That effective communication is not there. And so my ability to be learnable and to engage in effective communication is not there. And so what I do is I shut down, right? That's what the person does. They shut down. They walk
Yes.
away. It's
The
easier to,
silent treatment is what that looked like.
and that's what I say. And that's when you begin to use your silence as a weapon, and you're not using your silence as your time to take a breather. And so that's the difference in learning, when you're weaponizing your silence, and or from when you're using your silence to process. Those are two different things. And when we're in a relationship, we want to make sure that we're not weaponizing our silence.
What about empathy? How does empathy play a role in resolving conflicts?
Empathy plays a role because it allows you to understand that that person may not be where you are, and it allows you to understand that that person has a viewpoint, that person has feelings, that person may have things that are contributing to the way they're reacting. And so it allows you to create this space of pause where you're saying, I'm calling you in because I care about you. And when I say calling you in, it means I'm having this discussion with you, going through. And so that's the most important part of being empathetic, is not listening to respond, and not listening to hold things over someone, but empathetically listening so that you can point out solutions, and be that ear to say, are you venting right now, or are
Mhm.
we having this discussion because we want to problem solve? And that's where empathy comes in at, because you want to be helpful to that person, and understand that they are coming from a space of, right now, they're hurting. So what can you do to help them?
And I just want to let my community know, and everyone that's listening and watching, the stuff that Dr. Barnes is saying is not something that you will figure out in a day or 2 days. It is going to take time, it's going to take patience, and it's going to take practice. You practicing the things that Dr. Barnes is saying. So I don't want you to think that this is a quick fixed situation. It is not. It's going to take time and energy, and being intentional about your emotional intelligence, and calling out your feelings and your emotions, and knowing how to talk to and listen to your partner.
Yes, and I'm so glad you pointed that out, because people tend to think that this is a quick fix, and it's not a quick fix. This grows over time. You continue to work on your. Listen, I'm working on myself every day. I don't
Mhm.
care. I don't care about the credentials. I don't care. I don't care about the accolades and all that. I am working on myself every day. I am a lifelong learner. I am learning me every day, and I encourage others to do that. So when you think about empathy, you need to understand that empathy doesn't mean agreeing with everything the person says, but it means understanding their perspective. And in
Mhm.
conflict, we often get stuck and defending our position, instead of hearing or navigating through the experience from the situation from somebody else's experience. And I like to say, put yourself in that person's shoes, and how would you react in that? How do you think you react in that moment when someone feels that they're truly heard and understood? They're much more likely to open up to their perspective and your perspective as well. They're more inclined to receive what you have to say, because that judgmentality, that the mentality of being judged, it goes away, because it's like, okay, I know that this person wants the best for me. So empathy creates a safety that's needed when we need to get to resolutions.
What are some red flags when it comes to emotional intelligence in relationships?
Red flags.
Yes.
Woo, that's a good one. Inability to take responsibility for the impact that they have on others. I like to say, whenever I'm doing leadership trainings, I tell people that your impact is greater than your intention. You may not intended to do
Oh, that's
something, but you
good.
have to think about the impact that it has on other people. So be consistent, consistent with blame shifting. You want to make sure that you're not content. The red flags is people who often blame others for everything that's going on. It's not my fault. This happened because this person did this. Well, if you wouldn't have done this, then I wouldn't have had to respond this way. That consistent blaming or shifting blame from themselves to others, those are red flags. Difficulty with repairing after a conflict, when people that hold those grudges and they don't know how to let things go, or they pocket. I like to say they pocket lock the grudge. So it's like, okay, no, I'm over it. But as soon as something happens, they go way back in.
Yes.
The things from first grade that happened, like those are red flags. Those are definitely red flags. And even refusing to acknowledge the harm, or even this one, over apologizing without changing the behavior. So they want to keep apologizing for something, but they're not changing the behavior. So it doesn't matter how many times I apologize. If I continuously do this behavior, that's a red flag, because that means I didn't learn from whatever the situation was, but that also means that I didn't care enough
Yes.
to change.
That part.
I
That
didn't care
part.
enough to change for you or myself. So that's the biggest red flag. And then that lack of curiosity about others' experience. I don't care about what you're going through. It's about me. That's a red flag. That's a huge red flag. And perhaps most importantly, the inability to regulate their emotions in a way that it doesn't cause harm to others. So if I'm lashing out, I'm upset about something, my need to hurt you because I want you to hurt the way I'm hurting, that's the biggest red flag of them all, because those people are not willing to take responsibility. They're not willing to change often. Their mind is made up, and their need to hurt you because they're hurting lets you know that they have a lot of work to do on themselves, and they're not emotionally invested or emotionally intelligent enough to put the relationship in a space of hope and care and love.
What does, or how does, let me rephrase that. How does emotional intelligence show up in leadership?
I get that question often. And great leaders understand that there's always affecting the emotional climate around them, right? I would like to say I'm a great leader. I would like to say I'm a great leader. And in doing that, I come into a space thinking about, okay, let me see what they need before I just decide that I want to shift things around. What is it that's needed to make this space the most effective and productive? And so that's how emotional intelligence shapes great leadership, because you're recognizing that there may be stress there may be excitement, there might be frustration, there may be a sense of calm that's transmitted through your team's energy, but that your team energy feeds off of you. So if you enter a space and you're saying like, okay, I recognize that last week was tough, I'm gonna call this quick meeting, maybe about 5-10 minutes, because I want us together to shift the energy and the perspective. I don't want us to carry that over into next week. So what is it that we can all bring to the table so that we're moving from a positive space? What do you need from me? And then I lead with what I need from you. So that's what a great leader do. A great leader recognizes that their team feeds off of their energy. So get intuitive with your team and learn what your team needs so that you can offer that up from a space that they see that you are listening to them, you are valuing them, and their voices are heard.
And a lot of times, what happens in work, and I know this was my experience, something will happen, normally something bad or disrespectful, whatever that looks like. And the leadership will just continue on like nothing ever happened, like nothing was said, like
Mhm.
feelings were not hurt, like the disrespect was not there. They just continue. And then that plants a seed in you, that grows in you, that, this executive director does not care about me.
And so, and to that point, that's when you recognize that those organizations have high turnover rate. They have high employee burnout. You have a lot of employees who are just doing the bare minimum. Their productivity is low because it's like, you know what, you don't care about me. I'm going to do whatever I need to do to make sure that I don't get fired. I'm just going to show up. I'm going to clock in. I'm going to do the bare minimum. And at 5 o'clock, I'm punching out. Not 5:01, not 5:02. I'm just punching out. So as a great leader, you want to make sure that emotionally intelligent, as an emotionally intelligent leader, you want to make sure that you're creating a psychological safe space where your employees feel like they can come and bring problems forward and admit mistakes and be innovative about their fear and saying, this thing happened. Let's address it and what we can do to move forward. Whether it is ensuring that they're getting the right professional development, ensuring that your HR teams are properly trained with the
Yes.
right language, the right policies that support individuals, and making sure that people know that I want to understand everything about this business and everything about the people who are working in my business of what they need professionally so that they can thrive. And in doing that motivates not only your employees, but it motivates yourself. It motivates the leadership team. It motivates the HR team. It motivates all the different compartments so that fear is removed and strength is heightened.
Is vulnerability needed in the workplace?
So there's two forms of vulnerability, and I would say yes. You want to make sure that when you think about vulnerability, you want to make sure that you're being professional vulnerable, right?
Okay.
You want to make sure that you're not personally being vulnerable. In the workplace, they don't need to know about your personal business and all that. You have some things that you may say, like, I have someone at home that's ill, so I need you to give me a little bit of grace.
Right.
Things like that. That's something. If it's going to affect the way that you do your job, yes, that is something that you can slightly open up about. But if it's your personal thing, like, oh, you and your boyfriend had an argument, or you and your wife had an argument, and you're just in the best, that's no, that's not what you need to be bringing into work. Your employees don't want to hear about that. They understand that you're people, but they also know that I'm looking to you for leadership. I'm looking for you to help build us up in the direction that
Yes.
we're going. So you want to make sure that, I like to say, your professional authentic self versus your personal authentic self. Keep your personal home, but your professional, and whatever impacts your job, then that's something that's what you want to share. So you want to make sure that you're not focusing on being a perfectionist, but you want to make sure that you're being someone who's inspiring. You want to uplift others. Leaders, it's okay to admit that you're having a rough time with something, but you want to do it in a way that you're collaborating with others. So you say, you know what, I have some things going on that may not allow me to get this done right away on my own. So you know what? I'm going to bring you in on as a team and collaborate with me so that we can get this done in the time that it needs to be done. We want to make sure that we're hitting our benchmarks. We want to make sure that we are, meeting our projections, things like that. That's allowing you to be vulnerable, but it's also allowing you to inspire them to know that they're valued and that you see that they do great work. So you want to bring them in on this team. So a vulnerable leadership builds trust. Um, It allows people to see you as human rather as just as this person in this role. And at times, in the times of uncertainty, it allows you to build authenticity around challenges and asking people for help so that you don't feel alone, but also so they don't feel alone in the struggles when they are going through something, and they can reach out and say, can you bring so and so on to this project with me because I need a little more support.
If someone who's listening to you right now, Dr. Barnes, wants to start growing both their emotional intelligence and their vulnerability, what would you say is a first step to do that?
I would say a first step to doing that is get curious about yourself. Get curious about yourself. Learn the practical things. Like I said, that self inventory is the most important. You want to do your self inventory for your personal, and you want to do your self inventory for your professional. What is it that I need to do when we think about as a leader? What is it that I need to do professionally so that I can not only develop myself, but be comfortable and okay with developing my team? I think about leaders who lack emotional intelligence, and so often what you see is they're not willing to develop or train up their team members or those that are under them. So when their team members, when they come to them, employees come to them and they have a training they want to go to, and it's like, oh, you're gonna have the time, you're gonna have the days, oh, that's not in the budget, and they don't find ways to build them up. That's because they see them as a competition, as
Yes.
opposed to being a leader who's in tune with themselves and say, you know what, if my team thrives, then I thrive. So I'm going to build them up so that together as a whole, we're
Mm-hmm.
moving forward, and we're going to be the best team of them all. And
Yes.
that's what an emotional intelligent leader does. Intelligent leader makes sure that they build those up. So if you're someone who's out there and you're thinking, I want to begin to build my emotional intelligence as a leader, I want you to look for trainings. I want you to see what it is that you can do, workshops that you can attend that allows you to become more in tune with yourself. And guess what? I have just a workshop for you. You can go to my website, rdbspeaks.com, and you can tap into all the emotional intelligence trainings that I have there, my leadership development trainings. Those things will allow you to become the most successful version of yourself.
Excellent. A couple more questions and then we'll be done, Dr. Barnes. What is your intention? What is your goal in this space?
My goal in this space is about making sure that I am showing others that it's okay to show up for yourself. And so, just to add context to that, in 2021, I was diagnosed with a terminal lung disease, and so I had to revamp myself. I was forced to retire from the educational department, and I'm now oxygen dependent. I need a double lung transplant. And so I needed to figure out what it looked like for me, the new version of me, and what it looked like for me to move forward and not let dark times overcome me. And so that's what I began to build these trainings, because for anyone who's out there whose life has just shifted out of nowhere on them, I want them to know that they're not alone. Um, this space is allowing me to amplify the voices of those who are struggling with depression, anxiety, those women who are just starting over, and anyone who is battling invisible disabilities, that keep going. Don't give up. There'll be times when days feel difficult, when days feel hard, but it's not the end. I want you to make sure that this space is intentional about helping people understand emotional intelligence is not a luxury, it's a necessity.
Oh,
It's a necessity to build up. This is what resilience looks like. It looks like being emotionally in tune with yourself. It looks like having those essential skills to navigate life. And I want to normalize the experience in human struggles and imperfections. You don't have to be perfect. Your imperfections is what makes you an empowering person to grow. Coming from a trauma informed perspective, I know that many of us have emotional challenges that stem from trying to just survive. But I don't want us to just survive. My goal is to help people move from surviving to thriving by developing these crucial skills. So that's what I want to use this space to do. Amplify our voices and let people know that it is time for us to triumph.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Barnes, for being vulnerable and sharing what you have gone through and how your life completely just shifted, completely shifted. So thank you for that. My final question, and I used that word correctly. I'm so proud of myself. I used that word correctly. Thank you. I'm already implementing what you've been
Mhm.
teaching, Dr. Barnes. My final question for you: who do you think would make a great guest on the podcast? But you have to help me get them on.
No problem. And I have a slew of them. So I am a co-author in the anthology called Triumph in the Trenches. And I believe some of my co-authors would be perfect for you. I would say Dr. Sharon Smith Sanchez. She is a powerhouse when it comes to navigating mobbing in the workplace. Dr. Mary, she is phenomenal when it comes to mental health, navigating mental health personally and professionally. And Philip Warfork, he is the best about generational wealth and what it looks like to free yourself and ensure that you are making sure that your family members and your kids have something left and they have something to build upon. And then Dr. Carrie McWilliams, she's another co-author, and she is about building paralegals that teach you how to navigate through the educational system with all the barriers that has been put up, especially systematic barriers.
Excellent. You're going to keep me working, Dr.
Yes, I
Barnes.
am. I'm going to keep you working.
You're
Yes.
going to keep me working, and I thank you for it. Thank you so much for being on the podcast, Dr. Barnes. I have learned and I have grown in the hour that we have been speaking. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you. And I appreciate you having me.
To my community, thank you so much for tuning in. You can get Dr. Barnes' podcast and all of my other podcasts on YouTube Podcasts and Apple Podcasts. And remember, you always have time to listen and learn on the go.